Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So,
One Piece chapter 1110 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Bro, saying this chapter number out loud just makes me realize even more that the next chapter is 1111. I'm starting to get shivers thinking about chapter numbers, dude. Last time the chapters were all one, so 111. Oda lost his dang mind, went wild, made a Luffy and Zoro fight. I'm just saying. Honestly, I don't want to hype up numbers too much because they don't always perfectly align. We've gone through this story arc before. I have made this mistake before. Really, we shouldn't fall into the trap. Like, chapter 222 was interesting because that was the first chapter that introduced the Blackbeard pirates, even though we didn't know it at the time. 333 was when Usopp left the crew, but then some of these others, it just wasn't right. Were they good chapters? Yes, but that's because One Piece is comprised of many good chapters in the middle of many great arcs, which is also kind of where we're at in Egghead right now. Like, what can Oda possibly draw that would not be utter flames? Rhetorical question. If you dare answer that question, automatic ban, I promise you. Coming down with the heavy hammer. If you guys can't tell, I am having an absolute blast. This is great. Honestly, this chapter was everything that I thought it would be. This is one of those chapters where I read the spoilers. If you don't know that, now you know that. I don't really hide it, but I just do it. If you judge me, you'll hurt my feelings. But as a connoisseur of spoilers, you kind of get a feel for the different types of chapters and how it translates to spoilers. Heavy lore dumps and plot twists and such are just great. As text, it's just like 2 chapters in 1 week. But chapters like this aren't really like that. Like the bullet point of Workery turning into a bird just doesn't hit quite the same as when you actually see it. So in the lead up to the chapter actually dropping, you get a lot of people who are like, is that it? But then you read the chapter and you're like, this is it. Absolutely. Honestly, there were some pessimistic people I saw after the last chapter, just not totally convinced that the Gorosei were actually going to arrive, which, I respect it, right? Keep your expectations low, you can't be disappointed. But at the same time, the editor note said the stars are aligning, and we had a conversation between the Gorosei pretty much implying that they were about to come. So this was everything that I wanted. Everything I was hyped about. The Gorosei are as intimidating as I thought they would be, possibly even more so. I can't be the only one that thinks that. Some of these other Gorosei have kind of outshined Saturn. Am I wrong for thinking that? It's possibly just recency bias. But seeing them all lined up in a panel together, I couldn't help but think Saturn's kind of the derpy squat guy. Regardless, seeing them in action, they are a problem. What is currently happening in the story is leading to one of the most insane feats we have ever seen. And I feel as though the joy has only been amplified because of how surprising all of this is. If you'd polled people before this arc, I don't think that they would have told you that Luffy was going to fight all of the Gorosei. All the Gorosei would show up here. I apologize for yelling. I am usually more composed than this. I feel like the last 2 chapter reactions have been false advertising for my channel. People be like, is that the same dude? But this has seriously been some of the best chapters I've ever covered live, and I'm still not over it. Like real talk in the past, if you want to label me, I'm not a One Piece fights guy. I'm just not. I am obsessive about pretty much everything that surrounds the fights. The narrative, the characters, the mysteries, the world. But straight up, this scenario has unearthed something within me, and I am absolutely freaking here for it. Plus how awesome the designs actually are. This is so cool. It's just cool. I can't word it. So let's stop fanboying for a moment and actually try to analyze the chapter. We begin almost immediately where the last chapter left off with a reveal of the Gorosei who arrive immediately in their awakened zone forms. Usually we have to speculate what they are, we see them but we aren't actually given the official name confirmation, but in this chapter Oda decides to give us this, which is much appreciated. It saves us time being wrong. As we had previously speculated, Saturn is in fact an Ushi-Oni. While this may be confusing to some people, for me for instance, I learned about the Ushi-Oni through Yu-Gi-Oh, which didn't have spiders for legs, but spiders as the legs of the Ushi-Oni is a common depiction of it, and it's much more similar to Naruto, the 8-tailed beast, which was actually called Gyuki, which is the name Oda chose in this chapter, but Gyuki means Ushi-Oni. It's the same thing. Next up, I have Workery as Hoki, which is like this pig thing. I made a mistake earlier in the video. We're not going to fix it. You guys understand. This very intimidating tusked boar. Usually at this point, we would speculate what some of the magical powers a Workery could possess with this ability. Because Mythical Zone type abilities always come with some magical attributes, unique magical attributes. But I'll just be straight up honest with you guys, I cannot find the Hoki anywhere, currently at least. So I'm very curious if anyone in the comments can let me know what this mythological creature is based on. Is it a yokai like the Ushi Oni? I seriously need to buy a yokai book. The internet is failing me. All I can really tell you is that the boar is an important creature in Japanese folklore. It's often seen as a guardian spirit, which is something that we see in Princess Mononoke, a Studio Ghibli film. You also sometimes see them as statues guarding temples, similar to the Komainu. But they have this sort of divine status, and it's thought that they are messengers to gods, which kind of fits in this context. So once again, I actually do not know what the Hoki is, but powers based on boars in Japanese mythology generally, it's possible that Workery could have fire-related abilities to go along with devastating brute strength. Like we saw the mountain god in Wano, which was the white boar. Workery could be something like a mountain god, but instead a red boar, present in the Japanese folktale Okuni Nushi. Next up, we have Saint Mars, who's revealed as an Itsumare, a legendary strange bird yokai. Bro, Oda cooked so hard with the design here. Absolutely one of my favorite ever. The lore of the Itsumare is that they appear in the night sky during times of trouble, such as plagues and disasters, or flying over battlegrounds where many have died. In particular, they fly over places where there is suffering or death, yet little has been done to alleviate the pain of the living or pacify the spirits of the dead. They might literally feed on the lamentations of the dead. So in my opinion, Oda could do some pretty awesome things with Mars Devil Fruit, if he wants to. Some power related to spirits of the deceased or dead corpses, like a mythical vulture. It's also named after its cry. Itsumare means until when. So Mars' cry could have some effect, like his voice. But the reason I wasn't entirely sure whether or not the Hoki was a yokai or not is because not all of the Gorosei were yokai as we anticipated. Jupiter is a mythical sandworm. Like, I actually thought that this might be a mythical creature from some obscure mythology somewhere, but it's really, as you would expect, from Dune. Although Frank Herbert might have been inspired by the Mongolian deathworm myth. I hate to dovetail this review, but I literally just watched Dune. Literally in the theaters. And my god, you guys absolutely have to watch it if you haven't already. This one and the first part are two of the most genuinely epic movies I have ever seen. It is not normal for 3 hours to just disappear. And I know some book enthusiasts are like, well, they changed some things, so they're terrible. But you're wrong. Maybe whatever they excluded makes the books better than the movies, but for people who haven't read the books, they wouldn't know what they're missing. So yeah, if you watch the movies, it's great. As an aside, I thought that the Devil Fruit powers, the designs themselves fit the characters of the Gorosei incredibly well. The only exception is Jupiter as a sandworm. Like, he's pretty much the most regal Gorosei, and he's a freaking worm. Although credit where credit is due, that man has perfect teeth. Like, you could put those teeth in a museum. You can almost see them sparkle. So I kind of feel like Oda might have changed what he originally intended to give to Jupiter as a fruit sometime in the past. I kind of think that that man literally just watched Dune, and he was just as hype as I was. He was like, dude, I have to include a sandworm now. Based choice, if we're being honest. But yeah, the obvious magical attribute of the sandworm is what he showed in the chapter of being able to dig with impunity. But there's more that he could take from Dune if he wanted to. The sandworms, or Shai Halud, their offspring, their larva, produces spice, which is this magical, important substance in that series. It is incredibly valuable. For one, it's used recreationally as a drug. It can cause hallucinations or visions, which would be awesome to see. Love me some genjutsu. But more fundamentally, the spice is used to allow for interstellar travel, like a warp drive, or a wormhole. I promise you I wasn't gonna miss that opportunity. So it would be cool if Jupiter possessed the ability to warp. But saving the best for last, we have Saint Nusjuro, who is a Bakotsu or a skeleton horse, which is just, oh my god, the design of this hype does not begin to describe. But kind of similar to the Hoki, I can't actually find a whole lot of information on the internet about the Bakotsu. But given it is a skeleton which resembles in some facets the Grim Reaper, I would just expect it to have some powers related to hell itself, which is fittingly related to some of the things that Zoro does. But the thing about Saint Nusjuro is that he is very clearly a swordsman. We see him just absolutely slaughter the pacifista in the chapter. It was incredible. But one of the problems with Devil Fruit abilities is that you don't want them to overshadow whatever other powers that a character is supposed to possess, and with swordsmen, this is particularly tricky. I have this conversation from time to time because people love to speculate the Straw Hats that currently do not have a Devil Fruit getting one, and it's not always that simple. You don't want a new Devil Fruit to overshadow the literal hundreds of chapters of setup and development of the powers that they already have. Like, we shouldn't be thinking if Usopp got a Devil Fruit that he should be using the Devil Fruit ability all the time and not his sniping or his seeds, right? So ideally the fruit just complements his natural swordsman abilities. But honestly, it's pretty obvious how Oda is going to take this because there's a lot of similarity between Zoro and Brook. They are both skeletons, and we learn throughout the story that being a skeleton is actually an advantage for Brook because it makes him lighter, it makes him faster, and speed definitely seems like a power that Zoro possesses. He also freezes people with his slashes, which likely is a power related to the underworld or hell, just like Brook. We talk a lot about parallels in the story, and I think that there's ample opportunity here with Zoro, basically as a parallel to Ryuma. They both appear to be ancient samurai from Wano, and if you recall from Thriller Bark, Brook actually fought Ryuma first before Zoro. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Brook Zoro fight at some point in the story, if not here, then later. They're just too similar for Oda to not make that happen. But of course, Brook actually lost to Ryuma, so if this fight happened, I would assume that Brook would lose, and then our guy Zoro would step in. Fire versus ice. That is what I'm expecting. But I suppose while we're here, we're kind of jumping the gun a little bit, but of course, at the end of the chapter, we see Zoro beat Lucci. Which, can I speak for everyone, just for a moment, except for Sanji fans, by saying thank God for that. Like, that fight went on for entirely too long, especially as most of it was off screen. But of course, because of that, a lot of people are already talking about they're excited for a new Zoro and Zoro fight here in Egghead, which I would also anticipate. But look guys, I gotta be honest, I don't care how many unsubs this gets me, we got to spread the truth, right? Zoro fans need to come to Jesus. Y'all gotta face reality. Beating Lucci is great, he managed to do it in one blow. We'll talk more about the fight in a moment. But something is clearly wrong with Zoro. Clearly. At this point, I'm pretty certain that he is still carrying injuries from Wano, which wouldn't be a great surprise because that man literally saw the Grim Reaper. He basically died. And this is consistent with Zoro throughout the story, especially the pre-time skip, like he's always injured. This is not new. I seriously don't understand why this doesn't hype people up more. Like, this makes beating Lucci even more impressive that Zoro could do it while already being injured. But I do think that you should heavily hit the pause button for a legitimate Zoro and Zoro fight. If Zoro actually does beat him now, especially after fighting Lucci first, bro, that would be incredible. It just seems stupidly unlikely to me. Not least of which because I already suspect that all of the Gorosei have healing related abilities that are unexplained. None of our heroes should know how to permanently damage them. Not yet, anyway. So even if Zoro managed to slash him, which I kind of think that he might, it's not gonna matter. But yeah, this is absolutely something that we need to discuss. The Gorosei are immortal. Their healing capabilities are something we have never seen before. And most likely Oda has baked this into their actual fighting style. So, power scalers out there, just keep this in mind that the Gorosei know that they don't actually need to defend themselves from attacks or develop any sort of defensive abilities because nothing can harm them. So if Zoro manages to cut Zoro, that does not mean that Zoro is yet stronger than him. Likewise, just because Dorian Brogy chopped off the head of Jupiter doesn't make Dorian Brogy stronger than the Gorosei. I just felt like this was important to say because I'm expecting some wild takes. The Gorosei are obviously incredibly strong. Would I put them on the level of a Yonko like Kaido? I don't know, but their abilities are so unique, it lends to unique fighting styles, and possibly unique weaknesses. I suppose my expectation is that once we discover exactly how to permanently damage the Gorosei, whatever that might be, then defeating them like Luffy probably could as he is right now. That's just my opinion. We'll see. But I'm not really expecting our heroes to actually figure out this trick in the arc. Maybe we'll just get a clue. So the circumstances right now are pure survival. But as far as a clue to the nature of the Gorosei's abilities, we actually might have gotten that in this chapter. Oda told us the names of the mythical beasts that the Gorosei are, but he doesn't suggest that they are Devil Fruit abilities. We are one step closer to confirming the theory that Saturn and the Gorosei are devils unbound by fruits. They may literally be demons summoned in some way by Emu. If you haven't watched my video on this, I'll go ahead and include it as a link in the description for your entertainment. This theory is definitely growing in power. But anyway guys, rant aside, everything about the Gorosei made this chapter extremely worthwhile. I'm hyped for more. 7 minutes to go. And I'm kind of expecting it to get a little less lighthearted. Luffy is going to be pushed to his limits. And honestly guys, I think that Dory and Brogy have a very legitimate chance of dying. We'll obviously see, but that is my gut feeling at this moment. But of course we need to talk about the rest of the crew. Last update that we got for the Thousand Sunny is that Brook froze the ground, the ship is traveling, potentially off the edge of the island. Thankfully, Usopp is there to save the day. A rare Usopp feat. Love to see it. We then see Sanji use a Denden Mushi to tell the rest of the crew that they have to escape right now and not wait for Luffy. So I'm not expecting the rest of the Strats to be involved in the fight with the Gorosei, which might honestly save their lives. The only potential exceptions to this are Sanji, Zoro, and Jinbei, the new monster trio, serving under a literal god. The potential matchups here are honestly pretty exciting. We've obviously talked about Nustro and Zoro, they're both swordsmen, it makes sense. I think that Sanji might potentially match up pretty well with Mars. Sanji can skywalk, so he can basically fly, Mars flies. Sanji is a character with powers related to love, and we've speculated within this video that Mars' Itsumade abilities might give him powers related to the dead. Seems to fit to me. And then last here, Jinbei could be a compelling matchup against Workery. We speculated that he's a red boar with powers possibly related to flame, Jinbei's fishman karate. Again, it's kind of perfect. Also, Workery just might be a physical beast, and that's kind of what Jinbei is as well. So you hate to see a video get proven wrong so quickly, but I recently made a bounty video, and at the very end we talked a little bit about the Strat crew, potential bounty updates following this arc. It seems like the stage is kind of set here for Luffy's 3 Yonko commanders to do something pretty incredible. And look guys, I am not speculating that they defeat members of the Gorosei, but again, survival here for any amount of time is awesome and probably worth a bounty update by itself. If it goes down like I think that it could here, 1 vs 1 matchups with members of the Gorosei, and they merely survive for some amount of time, maybe 10-ish minutes, bounties for all 3 of them around 2 billion would make a lot of sense to me. But we still have some interesting questions here. I'm presuming that Luffy is going to be all around the battlefield, but it feels like his main opponent here is Saturn. Saturn's poison abilities are a problem for pretty much everybody else. And then maybe Dory and Brogy's main opponent is Jupiter. Or hell man, maybe all of this is wrong and Luffy just takes them all. He fights them all. Let Oda cook. But I'm curious as to what everybody thinks about Kizaru. I think that given this chapter, he's kind of a forgotten figure. Is he irrelevant and done? Anyway, we skipped over the details of the Zoro and Lucci fight, and from the context of this chapter, it's pretty clear what was going on. Lucci had some technique in order to remove one of Zoro's swords, which is why we saw him previously only using 2 swords. I get the impression that for most of this fight, 3-sword style was actually not effective against Lucci. Lucci could counter it. Maybe Zoro attempted to use 2-sword style because 3 swords was literally not working. So look, Zoro fans, I'm actually among you. I'm a huge fan of Zoro, although I am not a stan. I saw that Zoro said that he could finish the fight whenever he wanted to, and in this chapter he essentially proved it. But to say that Zoro was not trying for the entirety of this fight is just wrong. It just seems wrong. Zoro is a very serious guy, especially when the circumstances require him to be serious. He does not play with his food. He especially wouldn't now. So in my opinion, what we saw with Zoro in this chapter is the exact opposite experience that Kizaru has had. Strength is proportional to will. Kizaru has been nerfed the entire arc because he is not fighting for things that he wants to here. Likewise, when everyone criticizes Zoro for not being able to finish his opponent, he gets stronger. That's probably what happened. He got his ego bruised. Man got pissed off. Rightly so, let's be honest. I think that I would power scale Lucci somewhere around first commander, Yonko commander level. I think he's comparable to an opponent like King. And I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I kind of think that Katakuri is still the strongest Yonko commander of the ones that we've encountered. Ben Beckman is obviously going to be nuts. But yeah, I would scale Lucci somewhere around King and Katakuri, and obviously Zoro has already defeated King, so defeating Lucci really isn't progress, if you ignore the fact that I think that Zoro was probably injured during the whole fight. So I really do still think that there's some story related to Zoro in the future about his injuries, about his inability to defeat Lucci as quickly as he probably wanted to, something Oda's going to make that into something. That is my strong guess. I think that Zoro is probably frustrated. And if we're being very frankly honest, Jinbei and Sanji were obviously frustrated by what has occurred here. Even if he continues to fight and fights New Zoro and survives, I think that he could have done better, and it's mostly related to his health. I promise you that Zoro doesn't make excuses. That is not in his nature. He is all about winning. If he can't do exactly what he wants to do in the exact way that he wants to do it, it'll motivate him. I'm honestly hyped for it. But yeah, guys, I think that is everything that I wanted to discuss from the chapter. Obviously, we're in the midst of this fight. We have 7 minutes before Vegapunk's message begins, so we could have even more minutes after that in which the Strats might have to contend with the Gorosei. This is awesome. I've expressed that. You guys already know. But beyond the hype of the fight itself, it's kind of mind-blowing when you realize that even after all of this is done, then we're gonna mix in Vegapunk's message revealing some secrets about the world. This could possibly be the greatest time ever to be a One Piece fan. I legitimately think that is a possibility. I don't think I'm crazy for saying that. So I just want to say that I appreciate that you are willing to share the adventure with me. What a freaking time to be alive. Also be hyped up because we've got a Shanks video coming out Sunday, Monday-ish. It'll be a companion to the Blackbeard one I just made that everyone seems to be enjoying. Gonna literally speculate answers to mysteries that nobody ever has before, as far as I'm aware. But anyway, guys, as always, I'm curious as to what you think, whether you noticed something from the chapter that I might have missed. Just share your thoughts. Remember to check out my book, The Booms, link in the description. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.